I hope everybody's doing well, blessed, and enjoying family. As always, thank you to all for everyone's words, wishes, prayers, time, love, and support you guys share with me. Also, before getting started, thank you to those that have supported the message and has helped the message get as far as it has by liking, sharing, subscribing, and even unliking. Gracias. Well, to get into what I want to touch on today, this one's going to circle around two family members or two camaradas from the same hood, right? From Dogtown. And basically, when you're in prison, will be utilized against you. But, anyways, first, I want to take you back to Tehachapi, right? I had a celly, as I mentioned before in my videos, right? Which was Spooky from Dogtown. Real cool individual. We got along like real females, right? He actually did some of my artwork. He was in the mix, tough. Again, for those who know him, you know exactly who I'm talking about. Has a rag in his forehead that spells out Dogtown, and he has a Mexica Priest on one cheek going down, Maya Prince going down, and he has big SUR above his chin, right? Anyways, he was known for being a fool, putting in work, right? But he had one, you could say, defect with his person, or at least the way I see it, which was the love of Negra. He liked chasing that dragon, right? Getting high, which, for those that do it and don't allow it to get a hold of you, it's females. At the end of the day, we're all criminals. We're all in jail, right? So we can't expect everyone to be walking on eggshells. But anyways, I'm not gonna put salsa on myself, as you guys know I don't do that. But you guys know my family, and I'll just say everywhere I was able to touch something. You know, without getting into names or nothing. Staff are real easy to get them to bring things in when there's money in between, right? We just leave it at that. Shoe living, hole living, mainline, whatever. And most of the time you get to a place and either pilis or camaradas, they have been working on somebody already, right? They just need that extra angle. For those that don't know. Anyways, in THP I was getting a little bit of negra and a little bit of vidrio, right? Mainly the vidrio was for the woods, right? They love it, and it brings in money. You just gotta look in your surroundings, see if there's enough woods, right? And negra will unfortunately our gente, right? And anyways, me, I'm a certain way, right? If I get along with you, there's no need for you to ever ask me for nothing inside a cell. Everything that's mine is yours. So, anyways, I will hit, And off top, right, I would tell Spooky, hey, ahí te va. I would give him a whole gram, right, and tell him I know you like it, homeboy, but put some canteen in your locker too, Just cut that up and two for your use and two for some tienda or whatever, right? Some feria or whatever. But it never worked out like that, right? Nevertheless, it's just one of them things that gatos seem to always think or feel, which is you show them love and it becomes a mandatory thing, right? And after a while, I just started feeling it in him, right? That he used to get upset and wanted to say something, cause I didn't get high, and unless canteen came in the cell or whatever touchdown where it needed to touch down, I wasn't releasing anything, right? I learned my lesson, believe me. And so I had it, right? And he would do these little fits that in reality I knew he was reaching without saying that he wanted something, right? But I was real clear from the gate. Look, you come first and foremost, but it's a one-time deal. I'm not. I don't believe in habits. I could respect you, but I'm not gonna support a habit. I do it because you're my celly and we're cool. If we weren't cool, it don't matter if you had feria, I wouldn't give it to you, point blank. But I don't like to repeat myself. It's just always been that way, right? Even throughout things, if had to say things more than once, it annoyed me, to be sincere, because it's just I felt like I was getting shine, right? Anyways, it got to the point where one day I just straight up told him, man, hey homie, I feel like you want to tell me something. And he did, He told me, remember he was sitting on the top bunk and he told me like, hey, I just feel like, you could help me out a little more. And I straight told him, nah, Charles, I'm not obligated to do nothing, homie. I break you off from the gate and I do it out of heart. I don't even need to do that, you know what I mean? Anyways, one thing led to another, and it got to the point where, like, hey, homie, come down your bunk and put your shoes on, you know? And he was like, hey, nah, we're gonna get regulated, whatever, Told him it's alright, you know? It's alright. Worry about that later. Me personally, I always been, I'm willing to give one. I'm willing, excuse me, to receive one if I could give one, right? But, anyways, things went up in the cell. No need to get into details, right? But, it went up in the cell. Of course, T would eventually reach out to me like, hey, but we will keep our mug shut, excuse me. We will let a week or two go by and, well, I had a cousin from Riverside on the yard, and I told him like, hey, Manny from Purdue had split. That was his silly. And I told him, hey, T, move me over there with you, without having to make any type of excuses, right? It's my family. So I did. and we just kept pushing, right? I don't know. Well, I do know, but eventually Black would have been the homie's downfall, right? Fast forwarding to Corcoran. In Corcoran, again, out in the concrete yard, in the group yard, there was another camarada, right? From Dogtown. He had a big SUR across his neck and across his eyebrows. He had Dogtown, in Spanky. For some reason, I got to liking Spanky a lot. And prison's a small world. I said it many times, right? And he was spooky silly. Of course, I did not ever bring up, what happens in the cell stays in the cell, right? Especially if we kept it to ourselves. But it was like, man, it was like they had the whole thing written down. Because it unfolded exactly the same with Spooky. I mean, with Spanky as Spooky. Home we like to use, and it wasn't like Tehachapi. Tehachapi, we had it sort of from different angles. Corcoran, the seals were a little bit more hard. Nevertheless, the free staff or the MTAs, well, again, that's not important. I would look out for the homie and make my feria. I always like to eat. I don't never like having one deodorant. I like having so that any camaradas come and the kitty's empty, I like to buy reading material or whatever. Always, my whole term I've been like that, right? And, homeboy started with his little fits. And just like, again, it was written down, right? I would end up confronting him and things unfolded. And to be sincere, I was more fed up because I take it as weakness, right? You show love and I'm home in the cell. Pee Wee from Orange County told me one time, like, damn fool, those that don't get along with you in the cell, they got problems with them themselves. And it wasn't that, it's the habit, right? It's that monkey that, again, it just gets a hold of you. I understand that, right? But, anyways, we would end up getting down, and which was wrong on my end, right? Because I had a yard. If I would have gotten rolled up, well, I'll just say I already would have had my neck, point blank, you know, especially because of the things I was sending back there to Artie, feria wise, and well, anyways, we end up moving, right? We would end up moving, and home we would end up going with Pitufo from Primera Flat. He would sell up with him, and I would end up with the homie from 18th Street upstairs, right? And I don't know what happened in the cell, but it's what we talked, or I had mentioned to you. Level fours, especially in the shoe, you don't know who the camarada knows, who's he's related to, but we tend to always jump the gun, never do our homework. And whatever happened in the cell, they got down. In the group yard, he had already told me, like, hey, look, Chino, we're having a lot of misunderstandings. And I told him, find a cell. Don't, in Corcoran, the cells they have a hollow door, and basically, you could hear mostly everything. You know, you're lucky if you get away with an insult thing, right? But anyways, they would get down, and Judas would rush up in there and would separate them, right? And it just happened that Spanky would end up staying still in the block, not in the section, but in the block. The homie Pitufo, he would end up moving. I believe he went to two left, two right. He went to two block though, and homeboy was related. Artie was mad, so of course Pitufo reached out and asked for assistance. Again, whatever happened in that cell, I'm pretty sure there was disrespect. Cause I even told Spanky like, "What did you say? What did you tell homeboy?" And según it was just argument built through time, right? And anyways, Pitufo pressed the issue. The thing was, he was related to the Pili or the Pilis Aguirres from Avenues, and of course, Artie would end up getting them on appeals. They were sticking up for Pitufo and his angle, and Artie had already given his directive, which was he was at that point where he was more interested in taxing camaradas than actually getting rid of camaradas. He was just, my point of view was he was starting to stock up because he knew he was going to check in, right? Nevertheless, he bumped it up from 5 to 1,000 when it came to Spanky. It was the fine, right? And it didn't work out like that. You see, me personally being from Northern California, I know the neighborhoods, but I don't know their history like that, right? And I guess in the 90s, if I'm not mistaken, Dogtown had gone against the green. They had they didn't want the 13. They didn't want the title. They weren't gonna pay the MA. And one of the top pushers was Spanky and Spooky. They were on the streets and I guess being Nella, right? It's easy to know, right? Especially for Psycho and Pee Wee, and to hear whatever's being spoken. And they made a big issue with it. And by this, they didn't send a request to Artie. They basically said, "Hey, I want that fool's head." So, I just got that on my appeal that next group yard put two camaradas with fierros on them and make sure they hit the point. He has to balance because of this, and that. Again, it's funny how prison works. You see, everything you do that's negative will always come to light. I don't know how long they were sitting on this knowledge, but they played the card when it was fit for them, right? or for Pitufo in this case. There's not supposed to be no favoritism, but there is. Anyways, home would be coming out the yard. Since it wasn't a checada, it was a removal. There was no need to tell him, like, give him the heads up, right? So you know that the two shooters would end up hitting their point on this homie. And here's the thing, it's funny how, favoritism, they sweep things under the rug. And as a camarada, you can't even bring him up. Because I heard Pitufo, he would always play that card, right? My family member, which is nonsense, right? Of course, you respect it, but you don't allow it for him to use as leverage against you. The one thing I've noticed throughout the years is the rights that Southsiders, Sureños specifically, camaradas, had. They slowly started going out the window. And now, as we speak, tell me what's left for a camarada. So enjoy your freedom. Again, there's no need for you to go to prison and earn nothing. You're gonna be chasing Atecato's dope, money, or you're gonna be doing what he requests of you so he continues to get high. Do you, do your neighborhood. Most importantly, be loyal to those that deserve it. Stay true to yourself and loyal to loved ones. This is what we started. We always